All right, everybody. This is I usually do Facebook broadcast live on Vlog Island, which is like a Facebook page I have doing these things. But I figured I would do one here, and I sort of was torn between doing it and not doing it because I didn't want to sort of create more drama and stress and panic than there already is. But it's come to my attention that in Antigua and Barbuda, there's it it's astonishing how many of my friends are really not taking this seriously. Um, and I don't mean the health and sickness that comes around with this coronavirus, because all that information is there. Um, you can do a lot of good reading on what to expect as far as the sickness goes. You can read about what's happening in Spain and in Italy, and of course happening in China. But what you can't really read about is what happens to a third world country like Antigua and Barbuda when their only economy, which is tourism, disappears overnight. And I say overnight because when you think about it, a few weeks ago, all the hotels were full. The cruise ships were coming in full. We were in peak season. Tomorrow starts, a spring break time, and is typically the busiest time of the year for hotels and tourism in general. And it doesn't get any better than March break for tourism. Even Christmas and New Year's is often not as busy for my business, the excursion business, as it is at this time of year. What we're seeing right now, of course, which I don't even have to tell you, is zero bookings, a few bookings here and there actually still, surprisingly. But yeah, all the cruise ships have been canceled. So most of the excursion boats, which rely on cruise ships, I'm not one of them, but most of them are without any business at all. Places like Stingray City and Zipline and those kind of places going to have huge problems. Anyway, the layoffs have already started in Antigua and Barbuda. And within a few weeks, there will be thousands of people without work here in Antigua. I think, I don't, people say, oh, don't be so dramatic, don't be so alarmist. But the reality is that the layoffs have already started. And okay, I'm gonna come back inside in a little while. So we have a big problem with Antigua's economy. We have nothing else but tourism, and every dollar you touch is in some way, related to tourism, and it's gonna stop. And unfortunately, in our country, where most of the labor force does not have savings, you have to sort of think about that. If you pay somebody 100 EC a day, and they need that paycheck to buy food for the upcoming week, what happens to them when that paycheck isn't there? And yes, the government has been doing an exceptional job in my mind. I just came back from traveling, which was very, very scary. And of course, despite everybody telling me that masks don't work, I bought masks last month, and I wore masks on my whole trip. I disinfected all the seats I was sitting on in every the seat buckles. I mean, look, everybody was looking at me and making comments and laughing about the sort of germaphobe that I was, but I was a germaphobe. Anyway, I'm back in Antigua, and of course I'm not mingling with my family. My family is desperately wanting to see my son, who I brought back here, but we're not allowing any family members to come into contact with us for at least 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. But anyway, my point was, in Canada, nobody asked us any questions, really. Have you been to Hubei province? That was it. I traveled to six flights, and what was happening in Canada was kind of scary. It was very I was surprised. Anyway, back in Antigua, and nobody asked me how I was feeling. Nobody asked me, how are you today? There was nothing at the VC Bird Airport to check. You know what? There's going to be a lot of people here getting sick. it's pretty obvious. That's what everybody's telling us. But that's not my real worry, you know? Like, that's not my real worry. My real worry is about what happens to all the people in this country who don't have money to buy food. And I think that the government probably are doing things, but I haven't heard from them. And I would hope that Gaston Brown addresses the nation in a very somber manner and lists all the plans that are going to be, that are right now in full swing for what's about to happen here. We're going to have thousands of people without work and without money in the near future, and I'm interested to find out how are we going to feed them, how are we going to look after our people. It's because if we don't, I don't know what the answer, what that looks like, right? So of course, without saying it, I'm sure that they have been calling, everybody at the Defense Force back and having meetings there. I'm sure that we have I'm sure there's lots and lots of effort being put into the police force and the Defense Force right now. Because in 1995, when Hurricane Lewis hit Antigua and Barbuda and also St. Martin, there was a lot of chaos. But 1995 is so different from now. And you look at what happened in St. Martin after Hurricane Irma. Before anybody got hungry, before anybody got thirsty, less than 24 hours after the hurricane destroyed St. Martin, you had people going up to shopkeepers, telling them to get the hell out of the way, breaking down the door and stealing TVs and jewelry and all that stuff that they couldn't even eat. They had no electricity to run their TV, and they were taking every flat screen TV out of Class Electronics on St. Martin Front Street. And they had looting there, just crazy looting. They had people, like gangs, going from house to house. Now look, I don't want to scare anybody. Like, that's not the point of this broadcast. But if you think that we're going to have huge unemployment here and no cash, and we're not going to have some sort of societal problems, then you're just as naive as so many people I've been talking to over the last few days. So I'm interested to find out about how we're going to feed unemployed people here in the very near future. And also I'm interested to find out about security and what's going to be done. And I think what I'm saying is it would be good to hear a little bit more from the government about what they think is going to be happening over the next few months. And that's another thing, you hear airlines saying they're closing operation for 3 weeks or for a month. Like, according to the science that I've been reading, the science says that, we have months before it even peaks in North America or in Europe. So if it's months before it peaks in North America or Europe, how long before we get full airline flights coming back to Antigua full of tourists coming to spend their money here and support our economy? It's going to be a while. So this is very different in my mind from a Category 5 hurricane hitting your island, because the day after the Category 5 hits your island, people start looking for construction materials, hiring people to clear up and everything else. This is kind of different from that, I heard that they're doing things in English Harbor right now to stop people getting off boats, new boats coming in from St. Martin and elsewhere. I've seen a big increase in the number of boats anchored up outside of Jolly Harbor. There's boats coming in right now as I'm looking at the customs dock over here. The boats have a big problem because a lot of them can't go to Spain, which is where they normally go within the next few months. I'm interested to see what happens with those guys as well. There's all kinds of other problems that people are not talking about, but I'd love to hear proactive discussion on what the government is going to do to help the people of Antigua and Barbuda through this big problem. It's not like the United States of America where you go and say, hey, can we have like billions of dollars to shore up our people and shore up our economy while this thing blows over. I don't think people here understand how little money is there in the reserves here in Antigua. So, you know, it's not just employees living from paycheck to paycheck. I think our government lives from paycheck to paycheck too. So, you know, we need to prioritize things and get things in place, and I want to hear from them. You know, I'm looking at the comments here. Looting and rioting, somebody says. Well, I'm not sure. I don't think that's going to happen, because hopefully they have things in place. But I want them to tell us what they have in place. I want them to tell us about food security. I spoke with Darren Barrett, who is the boss of Epicurean Supermarkets, and he told me that they've ordered huge amounts of food, extra food. Obviously, they've been watching it very carefully. They own the Barrett family have a bunch of resorts here, and I know Mr. Barrett. They're very, very, very smart people. So I know that they've been planning, and they've been doing a lot of work over the last month to prepare for this. But how long will we be able to keep buying from the supermarkets? I mean, my home mortgage is huge, and without people filling those boats, the home mortgage doesn't get paid. So, you know, again, I hear the Italians are easing mortgages or doing something to take care of the mortgage payments. You know, what's happening here? These are things that I'm not panicking about, but I am worried about. You know, am I going to go and pay my mortgage with the thousands of dollars I have in reserve, or just put that in my pocket and say, no, I'm going to keep this to go and buy food from Epicurean because they still have food? So there's all kinds of things we need to think about over the next, well, we need to think about them now, right now, and talk and tell the people, reassure the people. We need to reassure the people. What happened in St. Martin after Hurricane Irma, when they had to fly in French military from Martinique and elsewhere? Like, this is not a Category 5 hurricane. It's completely different. But I think we should look at what happened in St. Martin and just realize that, yes, we're all calm right now. Everything is cool. But how long will that go on for? So let's, please, Gaston, Mr. Brown, Prime Minister, I've respected most of your decisions so far when it comes to this crisis, and Malwin and Joseph, but I think the PR needs to step up quite a bit. So please, I think we should start having daily addresses from you, and let's hear about what's going to happen in the near future.